Live as if you were to die tomorrow, but learn as if you were to live forever. Mahatma Gandhi, Neil? Oh, you're good. You are. Yes, it was. I also really liked Winston Churchill's I'm always ready to learn, although I don't always like being taught. But the gravitas in Mahatma Gandhi's words, well, they work for me. And I feel like I've learned stuff what I didn't know before making this week's show. Talking of making, let's make a picture. I'm going to photograph today in a square format. For no reason really, I just felt I wanted to today. So I've set my X100V, it's in JPEG, to square format, 1:1. I found some amazing, look at these. I mean, they look like stones. They don't even look like mushrooms, but they are. Let me get a picture. 300th shutter speed, 160 ISO, 4.5 ISO, slightly underexposing by a stop. A sketchbook to start the show.
The Photowalk.
No Barney on the Photowalk. Yes, a Barkalot this week has been claimed by the family. I said, right, ready to take my photo walk. I went to get Barney's lead, and they said, no, we've got him. We're going up top, which is our word for going to the airbase at the top of the hill. A walk we've made many times together, actually, on this programme, on the photo walk. So they went off with Barney, and I've been left to walk a quieter route, at a path I often take at a place called Brimpton, which I love. It's a very solitary walk. This is rarely made by other people, and it's very difficult to get along here at some parts, sometimes of the year, when the weeds really grow out and across the path. But they're receding. Well, the rains certainly put paid to the fact they wouldn't let you along this path, the weeds, that is. So I'm there today on my own. No Barney this week, no Sir Barkalot. He walked with me on Wednesday's Extra Mile. From my things I know very little about list, this is item number 312. It's a long list. But I'm willing to learn, and I think Winston Churchill would have enjoyed being taught too by my guest or guests today. Mally Davis is along to talk about chaos in your pictures and chaos in woodland later on. But let me start by saying one word to you, and this is my 312th item on my list of things I know very little about. Baseball. I learned everything I know about baseball so far in my life from watching a movie that gets mentioned during my chat with Jean Fruth, who is a much heralded sports photographer specialising in baseball. Though, as you'll soon find out, that's just one part of our chat. Other parts, going off script, off piste as it were, include pizza and the perfect snack, turning the fan off in the dark room, don't try that at home, kids, and the Rolling Stones. And I'm starting with another quote on the programme. What, 3 in as many minutes, Neil? Yes, I know, forgive me. But I think let me just divert slightly, as I'm known to do, from the beaten path. I think I shall adapt my answer to the question I ask others, but I'm waiting to answer myself. It's the, what would you take if you were stuck on a desert island question? And yeah, usually, I mean, family aside, of course, because that would be the first thing I would take. But if it's an item, assuming the family and Sir Barkalot have rolled up on that beach with me, it would be a camera. You have to put semantics aside here as well, because clearly I'd need a dark room of some kind, or some form of electricity for charging the batteries in the digital camera. So look, put those things aside for a moment. But I think running a close second, if not catching up at the end tape now, would be the ultimate bumper book of quotes. Because as you know, I like a quote or eight. And I found another that if you squint enough at the words, and it's a baseball stroke photography one, so it fits well during the introduction to today's show here. If you squint enough at the words, they could morph, or certainly mentally morph, into a quote that's pretty apposite when it comes to making pictures. Think about the the famous photographers for a moment in history who've suggested over an entire career they've only made a handful of pictures that they think truly represents their life's work behind the lens. I mean, Ansel Adams said 12 significant photographs in any one year is a good crop. That's not the quote I'm about to share, by the way, but that's another quote to add to the list. And there are many street photographers that we've spoken with on this programme that I've chatted with who suggest that they can return over and over and over and over again from a trip out to make photographs, and they haven't pressed the shutter button once. They haven't been inspired, they haven't seen something, they haven't felt that thing you may need to feel enough to press the shutter button. So here's a quote from Mickey Mantle, one of the best players and sluggers of all time in baseball. And I think this is the one that perhaps plays, in some respects, quite well when it comes to talking about photography as well. And not always returning home with the shot. He said, and then I'll put my quote away, I promise, underneath the palm tree. He said, during my 18 years, I came to bat almost 10,000 times. I struck out about 1,700 times. I walked around 1,800 times. You figure a ball player will average, about 500 at-bats a season. That means I played 7 years without ever hitting a ball.
Today on the Photowalk.
Doesn't matter, football, soccer, basketball, baseball, tennis. They hit the ball the same way. They throw the ball the same way. They leap in the air exactly the same way. You'll just see when they're leaping as they're kicking or they're throwing, their arm is the same, in the same exact position every time. That's why they're at the peak of their game. So if you know that, you know what side to be on, what angle is best to shoot them, because you can see where the beauty is in that shot. Then you're ready and you're making better pictures.
It's the Photowalk. You and I making some pictures with our cameras or smartphones, sketchbooking our walks together, enjoying the letters and the inspirational stories you've sent in. A show for photographers of whatever kind. A show for those who like walking, those who like to explore, all made possible by our extra milers and mpb.com, which is a great way, a great website in which you can buy, sell and trade used camera gear online. I use them myself. I buy quality kit through them, new to me kit, that is, like lenses, camera bodies and so on. If you're buying, you get great peace of mind with a 6-month guarantee, which I personally find one of the most important parts. I know you don't get that with every other site that sells camera kit or where you can trade camera kit, so I find that personally really important. If you're trading or selling, MPB will send a courier to pick up your kit on a day you specify. And once it's arrived back at their warehouse and it's gone through the checks to make sure it's been properly graded, you get paid direct into your account quickly. It's a very easy to use website, is mpb.com, and it's helping photographers to buy quality used kit or sell gear we no longer need, so we can free up some cash and give others a chance to go make their stories. mpb.com. I will put a link on today's show page. So, on the show today, Gene Fruth, yes, and then Mally Davis, our man amongst the trees, who today in the feature, roughly in the middle of the show, talks about chaos and embracing chaos in your pictures. Letters from the greenhouse, living in a slaughterhouse. Lordy, Lord, Neil, this is sounding eclectic already today. Sending yourself postcards because, as one famous cosmetics company says, you're worth it. A word or two today about authenticity, why imperfection is perfect, and other stories as we make our way, I'm sure. Right, let's get the walking checklist out. Coffee, check. Garibaldi's, check. Walking boots, check. And the ultimate book of quotes, does it exist? Well, yeah, check. Let's start the walk. I got a feeling, he says, Q-Song, I've probably shared a picture of what I'm about to make a photograph of on the show page before. All today's pictures that I make with the others that we talk about on the programme today, and of course Gene Fruth's and Mally Davis's picture that he references when we talk about chaos in the middle of the show today, the feature somewhere in the middle of the show. I've got a feeling that this picture that I will show on the show page as well, with my somethings and nothings, my sketchbooks from my walk, I've featured it before, but it's always new, isn't it? It's always a new angle. I like it because it's a dead branch now. It's very brittle. I reckon if I'm not going to, but reached out and snapped at one of the twigs, it would come off really, really very easily. But I like it because it's almost, it reminds me of the tentacles of seaweed. And let me just, 1 2/5, they're 4.5, quite dark along the path. Let me just check I've not got my neutral density filter on, which comes with the X100V. No, I haven't, it's just dark. Here we go, we're at 2000 ISO. Let's get these tentacles from this branch. Square format. Oh, I'm not sure, maybe there. Changing my mind. There we go. A couple of sketchbooks. We'll have a look at those when I return later on to look at the images. Well, we're starting with silliness today because we all need some silliness in our lives, don't we? With all this seriousness in the world at the moment. So a couple of letters to start. Being careful about the word letters, as you're soon to find out. Actually, this first one's not a letter at all. It's a postcard. Yes, a wish you were here postcard has come flooding in. The postcard will be on the show page today so you can see what I'm about to read from, but it all makes sense. It's a card. It's a digital card, of course, but you know me. I like my analogue language, so it's a postcard from Paul Friday. A wonderful black and white of standby, a car bridge. This, writes Paul, is our bridge. I say our, but it's the only bridge in the village. The village you did not tell me the name of, I might add, Paul. The river here is tidal with a range of around 3 metres, so someone from the council has the job of sitting in a cabin on 2 hours either side of high tide to swing the bridge and let the boats through. Someone who's not been automated, Paul, yet. That sounds like an automation. Well, thank goodness your part of the world has escaped that. Somebody hasn't noticed. Look, we could automate this bridge. Why are we paying somebody to sit there all day? This is music to my ears, Paul. As the tide changes, the river flows upstream, then stops, then runs back out to sea again. The man from the council is deeply tanned and well-read, I'm sure he is. The land around here is pretty flat, really. There's no contour lines on the OS map, and the river has the combined might of many Dale's torrents, so it can flood a bit. The village has a wall, but the far side of the bridge, as far as the horizon anyway, fills up to around 2 metres deep. At such times, perhaps once a year, we become an island community. There's usually one road still passable, but that just serves for runs to the supermarket for more wine. The village has around 1,500 people, and we have 4 pubs. I believe there used to be 8, but in those days we also had a railway station and a chocolate factory. We had a castle too, which still forms part of my garden wall. I live next door to one of the pubs in an Elizabethan shack that was formerly a butcher's shop. Our lounge was the slaughterhouse. What? The timbers in the house were recovered from the ship-breaking business by the river, so nothing is straight or level. What on earth do you live in, Paul? But it's part of a compact and friendly atoll on the River Ouse. Think of us as Hawaii with a Yorkshire accent, and duffel coats in place of grass skirts. Wish you were here, Paul Friday. Paul, that is perfect. And if it weren't for the fact you've already found yourself to be on the list of flasks to be sent, I'd be sending one to you right now. Humour, a postcard picture, and a house that sounds like it should be in a Stephen King novel. But that's absolutely perfect. It really is. Right, next up, I did promise you 2 bits of silliness. Next letter, words into the show from Jerry Besant. Neil, 1 hour and 12 minutes into last week's show, there I was happily pottering around in the greenhouse listening to the show, enjoying your chat, by the way, with Craig Fleming. He really did indeed seem a very down-to-earth man, as you said. Anyway, there I was checking on the toms, which are looking very promising this year, when I swear you started speaking directly to me. Now, don't get too concerned. It's not time yet to call in professional help, but I am wondering if you're subconsciously changing your show again. I mean, I know you like to experiment now and then, but I swear you said, when referring to the mailbag, this show is all about the lettuce. Well, if it is about the lettuce, I'm looking forward to this journey, learning more about early curled Silesian and moon red varieties. Perhaps you can start with how to stop the dreaded downy mildew, although how you're going to find a specialist photographer in this genre is anybody's guess. Good luck, though, and more strength to your chicory. Is that variegata? I think it is. To your chicory variegata. I've never heard of that in my life. See, I told you we're learning stuff this week. All the best, Jerry Besant, in a greenhouse just outside Alithwaite. Jerry, that is almost flask-worthy. I'll look in the box, see if we've got enough. I'm just about to order some more, and I might well send one through. And I did listen, but I had to check. I did listen back to last week's show at the point you suggest, and I think I do indeed sound like I might be embracing the new green-fingered edition of the Photowalk. Roll tape, please. Neil, back in the studio. I am hoping that from that you'll have some thoughts. This show is all about the lettuce. This show is all about the lettuce. The lettuce. The lettuce. He's right, you know. Oh, the lettuce edition from last week. It's getting more overgrown. There we go. That was my fault for mentioning at the start of the show. Oh, look, you can walk along this path. You can, but this bit, hands in the air, the stingers. Oh, there's one right under. Ouch! Right underneath my arm. Thank you, Mother Nature. Oh, hang on. Just rewinding for a moment to Paul Friday's Wish You Were Here postcard for the summer, which was a great way to start today's show. That was perfect. It really was. Because I meant to say the photo looks very vintage. It could be 70s, 80s, maybe even late 60s. I don't know. Perhaps before, in many ways. I mean, there's nothing in there. There's no cars, anything like that to date the picture. There's nothing in there to take you to a particular date in a diary, which is fantastic. And I love it about that. It harks back to the postcards I was telling you about that my mum and dad collected from our hometown. Pictures of the shopping precinct. I mean, at what point does somebody... I think people still make postcards like this, don't they? That's why this is the Wish You Were Here feature. At what point does somebody say, we need a picture postcard of a shopping precinct? That's what people are going to want to send home to their loved ones. That's the money. That's the money shot, that one is. I mean, we had... I thought more about it after last week. We had a postcard. I've got when Dad passed, his briefcase. I've got his briefcase, his work briefcase. It was absolutely tip-top full of postcards, greetings cards and all sorts of things. I've sorted through it once. And there's a couple of cards I want to come back to, perhaps actually even as a feature. Oh, you don't mind, Dad, do you, if I... look back, I'm looking in the air, look into that briefcase and read some of the cards. There's some lovely memories and things in there that have a photographic slant. Anyway, before I go too far off that track, there was a picture of a postcard. Definitely we had this, of the Hertfordshire, the county I grew up in, the Hertfordshire County Stag statue, which was on the mini roundabout near the first newspaper I worked for in the town. But the bridge you sent, Paul, spot on, really. It'll be good to get your beauty spots as well, by the way, for this new feature. Send them to as well as those pictures that I was mooting just now, and the one that Paul sent in, that kind of thing. Send them to stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show with the amount of text you think you'd fit onto the back of a postcard. Paul, I think you're like me. he was writing, I think, in tiny words and having to then write around the edges like I used to. So we launched, if that's not too grand an expression for this feature, we launched our Wish You Were Here feature for the summer last week. It didn't work last year. I don't know what happened. It didn't work last year, but it seems to be working already this year. So I'm looking forward to your one. I'm going to keep referring to it as summer, by the way. Otherwise, I find I'm going to have to make excuses, a long-winded apology each time for those that are living in the southern hemisphere who are saying, hang on, Neil, it's winter here, don't you know? Anyway, to carry this theme through to the first part of my chat with my guest, Jean Fruth, I had this from our friend and extra miler, Tim Binder. Tim, lovely to hear from you. It's a wonderful story about Deborah Dolan, who at 21 and on her first solo trip abroad decided, I know what, I'm going to send myself a postcard. And that was back in 1979. Let me read a few words from the CNN piece about Deborah, who and that Tim made me aware of. But then I'm going to pop a link on today's show page for episode 391, and you can read the rest of this lovely story, because it's a wonderful story. And Tim, it's a great suggestion that I try and reach out and speak with her. I'm not quite sure whether we'd make an interview we might make a short interview out of it. That was me thinking it has to be a long feature interview. I don't know. It doesn't have to be. I will reach out. I'll try and find her. Deborah Dolan wanted to capture the joy, says this feature, that she felt when she looked out at the towering Vancouver skyline and the nearby soaring mountains on her first vacation alone. But although she was usually a keen diarist, she was swept up in the excitement of the trip and found she barely had a spare moment. See, this is what we call living in the moment, isn't it? We so often talk about living in the moment. It's almost a mantra on our car trips now, with the two boys in the back seat, with Sam saying, come on, look out, come off your phones. Come off your phones. Put the phones away. Give me the phones. Come on then. Give me the phone. You've heard that kind of conversation, I'm sure. Many of you anyway. Yeah, and then Sam will say, live in the moment. Live in the moment. Be here. Be present. Be present. They're the two words that she often uses. And that's what I think this feature's all about. Because Deborah said, I don't really have time to write in my journal. I didn't travel with a camera. So when I went to Whistler or Vancouver Island or saw places in Vancouver, I thought, do you know what? I'll just buy a postcard and send it to myself. On the back of each card, Deborah scribbled a paragraph or two about her impressions, thoughts and feelings, and then mailed it to her home address, signing off each card with a single drawn heart. And she still does this today and has amassed, well, I'll let you read the rest. But what I love about this story is her thoughts about signing off the postcards with a heart, which, as I say, she does to this day. It's a great story, it really is. There's a part of me that wants to say, Deborah. This would have been rich filmic pickings for you and your camera, but in 1979, it's fair to say that image making wasn't as accessible, or perhaps the hobby that it is for everybody, as it seems today. You know, what is it we say? 7 billion people have the opportunity to make a picture with something on this planet. Admittedly, most of that is with some form of camera phone. But in 1979, no, very different, wasn't it? The nicest thing about this piece, well, there's many nice things actually, is what she said she felt when she got home to the postcards that would have been pushed through the letterbox or in the mailing box, or in the mailbox, I suppose, when she returned home. But I'm going to let you read that. It's wonderful, and it's on the link that I'm leaving on the show page today. So thank you, Tim. Absolutely perfect. To pick up from last week's introduction of Wish You Were Here. Right. My guest, Jean Fruth. Now, if Jean were to send postcards from her travels, she'd have enough to wallpaper the home locker room at insert favourite baseball team of yours here. I've been saying now for over a number of episodes, actually, that I'd like to feature more sports photographers. It's a genre that's clearly rich with stories. Though, like many... hang on. Jean, sorry, I'm making your perfect introduction here. Well, I'm trying to. And I'm being... second week in a row now. What is it? I'm going to have to... I'm changing my brand of of midge-attack repellent. Because, something that embraces sending away the horseflies. That was again, something the size of a small Jack Russell with wings. Sorry, Gene, I apologise. I'll start again. You could edit that out, Neil. No, I think for various reasons that come up later on, I think being authentic and letting you into the whole story is really, really important. Anyway, now, look, I have been saying, yes, it's a genre rich with stories. It is. Though, like many conversations I have, this does take on a sort of, natural detour away from some of those locker room stories I was planning to ask. But it does, of course, give me the opportunity. See, sometimes I think there's method in this. When I take my detours, it gives me the opportunity to return and ask Gene some more questions. See, my plan works perfectly. As the bio says, from a small darkroom to the most iconic stadiums flooded with lights, Gene's trajectory as one of baseball and photography's preeminent visual storytellers has taken her on a round-the-horn tour of the world's most indelible landmarks, from the world of baseball to the world at large. My guest this week in 2 parts, and here's the first part, is Gene Fruth. Gene, you were attracted to photography, I think probably because of the alchemy to start with. And I like to believe that photographers who mention the word alchemy within their biog, it usually means that at some stage you've stood in a dark room and you've seen something get pulled from the developer and the fix, and you thought, now this has to be my life.
Oh, very good. What a great start. It's so true. I thought I wanted to print in a dark room and that be my profession. I loved the dark room, and I did a little dark room work in high school. And then my first photography job was printing for these 2 women who had a beautiful portrait business. They did all black and white film on location. And we struck up a deal that I do all their printing in their dark room and they take me on shoots and teach me how to be a professional photographer. And it was just, I loved it. I could spend hours in there. And I was one of those that turned off the fan and listened to music. So that's why my brain is a bit fried, all those chemicals.
Are you tempted to ever go back into the dark room again? Or is it just something these days that, it'd be lovely to do, but there just isn't the time?
Yeah, I guess it would be lovely to do, but no, I mean, who knows? But not right now. No, there may be a time I bring film back, and I see young kids doing it, and I think it's the coolest thing, to know what the darkroom is like and to practice that. And it slows everything down, shooting the film, as you know. It's, not guessing your age or anything, but
you guessed correctly. I'm going to blame mine on the chemicals as well. Then
fair.
I'd look a lot younger if it wasn't for that.
Yeah, that's what I say.
Yeah, but the people that used to, I suppose, go on the road, and we're going to be talking about you traveling on the road with your cameras and what you do. Once upon a time, they'd have had to take a dark room on the road. That would have added a whole layer of complication in some places, wouldn't it?
Sure, and just seeing all these, teams that had dark rooms and the room is still there where the dark room used to be. And yeah, it's pretty incredible what photographers did and what they went through, trying to make pictures at that time and getting things out for newspapers. And then, of course, the old guys who did it, they say that's when they were real photographers. Sure. But room for both.
Yeah, it's when we couldn't see in the dark room because there was the fog of Marlborough. It's that kind of thing, isn't it?
Exactly.
You couldn't see through the red light because of the Marlborough. You're going to have to handhold me a little bit through this interview, because as much as over the last couple of years where I've had interviews with sports photographers over in your fine part of the world, there's an element of my education certainly missing. So, but I understand that, and we're going to talk about your book in a while to come, but I didn't realise that the editor, was it the publisher or the editor of your book, actually was from London, and he knew nothing about baseball either.
Exactly, yeah. He was just terrific, and he was recommended through a friend who does these beautiful landscape books, Andy Katz. And he recommended Stu, and he was just, so he's from London. And when I called him and asked if he'd designed my book, he said, right. baseball.
He didn't say it like that, did he?
Oh, he did. Oh, he did. He was that personality, but he was wonderful. And it was such a great experience working with him because he did things in a very old-fashioned way. And I actually went to London. He asked me to bring 4x6 of all, my images. And we actually laid the book out on the floor to write it in an old-fashioned way. And what a fabulous experience. And he was, every once in a while, he'd look at a picture and go, "What are they doing?" But besides that, and I didn't change his mind about baseball. But he liked the artistic part of it. And that's what was great about the design, was having someone who understood, it was the art that I was interested in. Yeah. So not necessarily the game and the game action. So it ended up being, I think, a lot more beautiful thanks to him and his expertise.
Well, we do have baseball in the UK. Did you manage to, I know you say you didn't turn his head at all, but did you manage to get him along to a game at all?
No, not while I was there.
Shame.
But yeah, no, we're seeing more and more countries, get introduced to the game of baseball or become a more important sport. Great Britain played in the World Baseball Classic this year. Yeah, got all the way up to the semifinals.
Oh, that's our specialist. We do semifinals really well, but not quite past that stage.
Well, Japan won, and I think the history of baseball in Japan versus Great Britain might be a little bit different. So, but the good news is they played well enough to qualify for the next World Baseball Classic. So it was their first time in, and it was very exciting that they will be back.
Yeah, I'm quite proud. Semi-finals, not bad. Now, you started out as a portrait photographer. Why the leap to baseball? Has baseball always been in your family? Was it something that you really wanted to photograph, or is there some sort of serendipitous route that took you that way?
Yeah, I started off in portraiture only because that's where the opportunity was. I had a chance to work with these two women in their portrait business and printing in their darkroom, and in exchange for working and learning about professional photography. And they took me on shoots, and it was all black and white film, and just such a great beginning. But it really wasn't where the passion was. I didn't know what my journey was going to be at that point. And I was also going to school, taking classes, all kinds of lessons, workshops, trying to figure out what direction I was going to go. And then when sports presented itself as an option, I never looked back. And it was because I was coaching my son in rookie ball, which is before Little League. And then Little League called me and said, "We hear you're coaching rookie ball. We'd love for you to coach Little League." And I'm like, "Oh, no, I'm a one and done. I only did this because there was no parent who stepped up. I'm not a baseball coach." And they said, "Well, we really need women baseball coaches. Like we've been asked to have more women involved, and we'll put you with two very good coaches who will teach you." And so I thought, well, why not? I'll try it. So I asked my son Simon what he thought, and he's like, "Yeah, let's do it." And so he got to start Little League early. He was younger than he was supposed to be age-wise. It was a great experience, and I really didn't do much of anything except for take pictures. So and organize, the snack and what parent brought the snack. I wasn't, but I stayed in it for a lot of years. I was just a good recruiter more than anything else on the baseball side. But baseball, my family was a hockey family. We grew up like hockey was my dad's sport, and really all of us paid attention to hockey more than baseball, except for my grandfather was a Mets fan, and he listened to Mets games on the radio. So when we went over to Grandpa's house, it was listening to baseball on the radio, and that was pretty cool, just hearing games in that way, not on TV. But I fell in love with the sport through my son and through Little League, that early grassroots game, just the beauty of that, and the parents, and just everything that surrounds the game. And I had an opportunity. I sent photos in of an all-star game, not my son's game, older kids, to the local newspaper. And they said, "Wow, you must be a professional photographer. Do you want to shoot sports for us? We need somebody." And I said, "Yes, let's do it." And then away I went, shooting high school sports, college sports, and then professional sports later.
Wow, what a great route. Just the snack bit, I can't go past the snack bit, by the way. I know this is supposed to be an interview about photography, but Americans with snacks, you organise it properly. In the UK, we're lucky if one mum or dad turns up and throws a load of mouldy old oranges at us and says, "Cut these up, kids, just have a go," and you do it properly in them. you actually have a parent whose responsibility it is to bring a table and bring the snacks properly.
Exactly. And then, of course, as the kids get older, there's the snack shack. And every you go to, there's a building, with people that have to man it, volunteers. And it gets more complicated. And though as I shot high school sports, I thought about the snack shack and what I was going to eat that night for dinner. Part of it that, is like, I hope I get sent there for Friday Night Lights because they have a good baked potato. Yeah, the snack shack was definitely part of my life.
Does this mean, by the way, with you coaching baseball, that we're likely to one day see you as a coach? I mean, you've got well, we call them badges here. You've got your badges, you've got your merits. You know how to do it.
I don't think my coaching career ended with Simon in the 7th grade,
right?
And I think I was in over my head then. But I was a good recruiter. I could find the right coaches who had the skills, and then I would just hop down first or third base and start shooting and let everybody do what they had to do. And I stayed out of the way. But once organized sports get you, Little League, you get involved and then you're on the board and you're fundraising and you're doing all kinds of stuff. But for me, my coaching career now is teaching photography, teaching sports photography. So if somebody wants to learn how to take a baseball picture, I'm going to be there to help them.
Yeah. I'm much like you with my own coaching. I took my kids to one cup. My Jack, I took him to one cup. We won it. I retired. I thought, I'm never going to do better than that. That's it. We're done. I'll end.
No way to walk away.
Yeah. You place great importance, and you've mentioned mentoring. It's what you do now, and you place a great importance on finding a mentor. And as much as we have a great advantage learning online these days, I mean, YouTube, for example, but actually finding a mentor that you can meet with, watch, talk to, that human connection, they've been very important for you, haven't they?
Oh, tremendous. I mean, I wouldn't be the photographer that I am today, for sure, if it wasn't for my mentors, and you don't get everything from one mentor, one person. It's a journey, right? And you meet people along the way. Those 2 women, my first mentor, learning how to take a portrait serves you well in whatever you're doing photography-wise. Connecting with people. One of the hardest things, I think, is taking a portrait. So those 2 ladies and what they did for me early on, and then meeting Michael Zagaris was my first mentor in sports photography. And he didn't really teach me anything technical. He said I have to go learn that from somebody else, But again, it was connection and how to shoot sports in a different way. I thought everybody shot sports the way Michael Zagaris did, otherwise known as the Z-Man. He is the photographer for the Oakland A's and the San Francisco 49ers. And what an opportunity I had to work with him. And just, and what you get from him. Baron Woolman, the first photographer for Rolling Stone magazine.
Yes.
One of my first mentors. And, just him teaching me how to connect with people, how to, network, learning how to network as a photographer is an important skill. And just the things that he taught me, ideas that he gave me, the idea of traveling Route 66 came from Baron.
Was it?
Just fabulous. Yeah. Just came up with, get yourself an RV, or maybe the RV was his idea and Route 66 was mine, but it was definitely a conversation that I had with Baron. I credit him with so much, and he was I met him so long ago, and rest in peace, Baron Woolman, but he just, what an incredible career he had. And he shot sports a bit. He shot the Raiders football for a year and traveled with the Oakland Raiders and did all kinds of things. He's obviously known for Rolling Stone more than anything else.
Wasn't his advice to go behind the scenes to get the stories before the whole thing starts?
Oh, yeah. He tells a great story about that, told me a great story about his first assignment. I think it was shooting The Who. And it was first assignment for Rolling Stone magazine. And he gets there early, which he taught me to get there early, prepare. So he got his credential and they said, okay, here's your credential and here's your backstage pass. And he thought, backstage pass? What am I going to do with a backstage pass? And And just he went up front and looked for the location he wanted to shoot from, sat by the stage, and then waited for the concert to begin. And then, of course, he learned very quickly that there's great stuff that happens. And if you get a chance to go in the Who's dressing room before a show or after, you certainly do the backstage. And some of the greatest rock and roll photographs are taken backstage.
Absolutely.
And Michael Zagaris, the same thing, a fabulous rock and roll photographer. And his behind the scenes is second to none. Both great mentors.
That's the storytelling, isn't it? Now, I'm intrigued as to how the storytelling works in baseball. I know that sounds a strange question because you said, well, turn up, Neil, and watch it and photograph what's going on. But there's a lot more to it than just doing that. You know where you need to be at certain, and never mind actually the gameplay itself. There are all sorts of things you turn up to do. You say you turn up early. How does the storytelling work on a day in the life of Gene Fruth?
Well, when it's a baseball game, it doesn't matter if it's a little league game or it's the World Series. I show up early because early just helps so much with your planning. And I have a plan before I get there. I'm thinking about the pictures I want to make or hope to make. Of course, the game unfolds as it does, and you have to adjust. But you have an idea of the storytelling, and it's really storytelling like any other, like many types of photography. And it's, the way you would storytell in a movie or, a wide scene setting. Where are we? What's the scene like? What's it look like? Is it a big, beautiful stadium, or are we on a sand lot? And both are beautiful. I think baseball is beautiful. I can go on, and you'd fall asleep during this podcast. But I just think the sport is beautiful. And then all the details before the game that happen. There's so many details, and shooting that in a way to make it interesting for your viewer, right? Like having different scale, like maybe very tight on a detail. Maybe it's a cleat, maybe it's wide, and they're preparing the field in this beautiful light. And chasing the light is always part of the story for me. It's a very important part of storytelling is showing this beautiful light that can be during games. So it's always the scene setting, the details, the prepping, and then the action. And of course, the reaction from the fans, the reaction from the player who just, created that action, or reaction from their teammates. And then it all ends in, something. There's a winner and a loser. And how are you going to handle that? And what's your storytelling going to be for that part?
What are the fans like at baseball?
When it's big games, that's so exciting. Or games like the World Baseball Classic, seeing all these fans come from different countries. There's nothing like country pride. And it's great. I mean, we just had this it's every 4 years usually is when the World Baseball Classic happens. And 20 countries participated this year. And the Mexican fans, they came out so strong, and just seeing their culture and how they celebrate and how they cheer for their team is very different than the Japanese and their traditions and, what they're going to do. They blow up balloons, and it's, unusual cultural things that could be very interesting at a game like that. And I always like shooting fans on the first night because there's nothing like the excitement of their team having been in the World Series for a long time or a big game. And it's exciting, the big game. But the first day of the big game, if it's a series of 7, say best of 7, there's nothing like getting the fans on the first night. Everybody's just raring to go.
Wasn't it 2016, the World Series? I seem to remember, where did I read or hear you talking about one particular World Series as being special for you?
The 2016, that was one of the highlights of my career. The Chicago Cubs hadn't been in the World Series in over 100 years, and the pictures that made, and it was at the Cleveland Indians. Now Cleveland's changed their name since then, but so at the time Cleveland hadn't won in so long, and of course the Cubs hadn't won in a million years. So it was these two teams who haven't been champions in so long, and the intensity of these games, and it went all 7. And everybody says, who are you rooting for? Who are you rooting for? You root for a great story, right? I mean, I root for underdogs. But either one of these teams could have been great. But going all 7 games, there's nothing more exciting. You don't want it to end. It's going to end because this doesn't go further than 7. But how exciting it is when it's that kind of tension. And the fans, both sides, the Cubs and, well, now they're called the Guardians. So I'll say the Guardians, the Cubs and the Guardians both have incredible fans, so passionate about their baseball, real baseball fans. So.
Hang on a moment. So who since you're talking about who people root for, who's your team?
I really don't have a team, and it's not a
Gene, you can't know. I don't believe it. You see, I don't believe that anybody that's so passionate about a sport doesn't have at least a soft spot for one team. Or is it totally the wrong thing to say because you're worried that somebody might hear it?
No, I don't mind them hearing it. I have a soft spot for two teams, different reasons. One is I have a soft spot for the Oakland A's because I owe them so much. It's where I started my professional career in sports. Yeah. They've been good to me for so many years. Every photographer that was shooting games back then when I started, they really helped me so much. And that's kind of the reason why, like, you have to complete that circle and give back. I mean, people say like sports photographer is very competitive. The East Coast, they're known for, being competitive and wanting that shot. And sure, we're all competitive, but in the West Coast, at least the experience that I had, how helpful these photographers were when I was asking questions as simple as, camera settings. That's how, raw I was at the time, trying to figure so much out on this big stage.
It's a good year, possibly nearly two, since I spoke with Andrew Bernstein, the sports photographer. And we were talking about another game I was struggling to learn, but I got there at least I played basketball, so I was a little bit closer to that particular game. And he formed this wonderful bond, both personal and professional, with Kobe Bryant, the late Kobe Bryant. And do you have particular players, Gene, that you've because you've photographed so many for portraits, and the legends, many of the legends. Do you have any, like Andrew found with players that he got to photograph and know well, that you have, it's another soft spot question really, that you have time for and you particularly enjoy being with?
Yeah, it's for me, it was my time at the Hall of Fame and connecting with Hall of Famers. And, a lot of them, some of them I got the late part of their career and then see them go in as Hall of Famers, guys like Vladimir Guerrero and Ken Griffey Jr. Others, I never got to shoot their playing days because I was, too young and not shooting sports at that time. But it doesn't matter. The stories and the connection I made with the Hall of Famers, and they participated in both of my projects, and you get to know them in a different way when you're hearing these stories about their young days playing, and stories that people really hadn't heard before. Everybody knows about their playing days. And guys like Johnny Bench, who grew up in a town in Binger, Oklahoma, of 600 or 470 people. It was 640. I think it's now down to 470. Tiny town, and grows up, plays baseball, and he played basketball too, all through high school. He was a great basketball player. He went to state, but became the greatest catcher of all time, and all the way to the Hall of Fame. And incredible stories, And I'm partial to the old guys. I like the stories of what the sport was back then. It wasn't the incredible money it is now. Yeah. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm sure it's wonderful, but they were, just guys that hung out after the game. You could see them in the bar. You could see them, at the pub, and you could talk to them. And they're still that way today. They're not like entities, companies, but even guys like Cal Ripken Jr., who certainly started that new type of baseball player, and he's his own company, and he's done so much to give back to the grassroots game with his Cal Ripken, the Ripken experience, and he teaches baseball at his facilities in a certain way, in a terrific way. And guys like that and getting to be around these legends have been tremendous for me.
Well, I want to talk about grassroots soon. We've mentioned it a few times. He, Andrew, that is, talked to me about the moments he missed. I just remember a part of our conversation. He looked in the eye and said, Neil, the moments I've missed, I actually still dream about them at night. Or are you able to put the game to bed the moment you walk to the parking lot? Or have you got, is it I wonder if all sports photographers work in that way. They think that was the moment I needed. And my camera was down at the time. I was chimping, or I was looking the wrong way, or my camera's pointed into the crowd.
Oh, the worst feeling, right? The worst feeling. We've all been there. And as sports photographers, certainly it haunts you. And there's two things. When it's happening, you really have to learn how to move along. It's like an athlete, right? If an athlete makes an error, it doesn't matter what the sport. If he makes an error and doesn't throw it in the garbage and move on mentally, it's the mental game, he's going to make another one. Yeah. It's going to happen. So if you miss it, and you're chimping, like you say, or you're stewing in your head, the next thing is going to happen and you're going to miss that.
Yeah.
Being able to, at the moment at least, say, okay, let it go, move on, stop trying to look something in the back of your camera that's not there, because it's not there. So don't look anymore, and stop looking at everybody else around you who's looking at it because they got it and you didn't. Brutal.
Yeah.
I think it feels so bad. You just make sure it never happens again. Just even when I was traveling, shooting grassroots, I was in the Dominican Republic. It was one of my first trips. And I was with a driver who was a retired scout. And my Spanish is terrible. And I was nervous to be, with him and in this country and trying to figure everything out. And I didn't really know how to shoot grassroots that well at the time in a place like this. It was so wild and so new. And I was shy to speak up in some ways. And we were shooting at a baseball, just this lot, and making great pictures. And we got in the car. And as we were driving on this dirt road, we went past these kids who were walking, and they were baseball players. One had a glove, one had a bat over his shoulder, and they just looked great, like walking on this dirt road. And one of them had a machete. And I turned as the car was driving away, and I watched them get smaller and smaller, like behind me. And I never said, stop the car. And what a picture that could have made from my first book. I wasn't making a book at the time, but at the time it was, and it haunted me. I couldn't stop thinking about, why didn't I just say to him, stop, stop, stop? And I told myself from then on, I will always say stop. I will always say, let's wait another few minutes. Let's go here. Change the plan if I see something, and not just be passive about it and let something go by.
Maybe you should employ a photographer's thoughts that I spoke to once, who said, if I didn't get it, it didn't happen. I thought,
the problem is when you're at a big sporting event, there's 60 other photographers who are going to remind you that it certainly did.
And Jean Fruth returns very soon. Have you been walking somewhere that you feel we should know about? Then send us some pictures. That's what fuels this show. Send them to stories@photowalk.show, 2,500 pixels wide. I've been asked recently, do you mean the long side, Neil? No, wide, width, 2,500 pixels wide, please. And or if you can't do that, don't worry. Send me the full resolution picture, and I'll do the heavy lifting for you, as I say. But also, it's great to hear from you if you have some thoughts about photography or walking, hiking, because it's a photo walk. So there's starting to be a few of you now that don't necessarily make pictures, but the walking is the bit. You take your cameras out with you, or maybe a smartphone with you, but it's the walking bit that's the pertinent part for you. So let me know what you feel about, because we talk often about mental health. Let me know how you feel when you're walking and making pictures. Places you visited, things you feel. That's what really drives this show. And I absolutely adore hearing from everybody, he says. Sounding like a disclaimer, but I really do love to hear from those who have been listening to the show perhaps, but have never really felt that they've been able to, for whatever reason, write into the show before. It's great to hear from first-time writers. So once again, stories@photowalk.show. And there is a link, of course, on our website, photowalk.show. There's even a form on there with a few questions, some sort of conversation starters, if it should so help. And I look forward to hearing from you. Right, the feature roughly in the middle of the show time. A reminder, first of all, before we get to talking about chaos and trees. A reminder of the assignment, which I do every single week, the reminder that is. This month we have an assignment from the renowned British editorial and fine art photographer Alice Tomlinson, who set an assignment, and it's a challenging one, where she challenges you to make a set of 3 photographs inspired by some text. This assignment was set initially in episode 388. So, which is only a couple of episodes ago. So if you want to read more about it, and of course see the pictures that are already beginning to trickle in, then you can go to that page. The assignment, by the way, is open forever, really. I mean, I know I find one a month to give a coveted flask to, but it's open for all time because it's not about the prize. Yes, it is, Neil. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Yeah, let's not have an argument. I don't want to fall out with you about this. It's there to inspire others in their picture making, and so that page is on the website. You go to photowalk.show, find the features tab, and you'll find the assignments are in there month by month. I don't know whether you can hear, I think I'm just about to be attacked by a swarm of something. Not flies this time, birds. So, please keep sending those in, and I'm really looking forward to what you have in response to Alice's assignment this week. Some super ideas coming in. It could be a song, it could be some words from a book, it could be something said to you, a quote. I mean, it was a quote on a bell, wasn't it, that inspired one of Alice's photo projects, as we found out. So think of some words, that's number one, or reference some words, and then make 3 pictures to go with those words. Right, it being the 4th Friday of the month, it is Trees Week with Mally Davis of the fabulous Let's Create Circle. We spend a lot of time walking in this wonderful community, and for many of us, I guess that's woodland. It's our getaway space, isn't it? That tranquil place where we can gather our thoughts, embrace that simple, I'm going to call it bristle of leaves blowing over our heads, and footsteps like this through the understory, which in autumn and early winter, often on this show anyway, it can sound like we're walking through a sea of drying orange leaves, can't it? You can certainly hear the seasons in this programme. And this week we're talking about chaos with Mally, and the literal art of chaos and busyness. I don't mean business, I mean busyness, B-U-S-Y, busyness of a picture. 10 minutes with our friend Mally Davis, Mally of the Trees. Mally, this month we're talking about chaos. Now, I am somebody who likes things to be pretty, if not symmetrical, if not too simple. I need to in my mind sort of pick out what the focal point of a picture is. And because I photograph people generally, that will, for me, not be too cluttered. Because if it's too cluttered, if there's heads behind heads behind heads behind heads, for me that's an absolute disaster. But you don't have much of a choice when you're in woodland, do you?
This is true, and this is a big part of my woodland photography for a while, actually. But I've only just see through the woods for the trees. I've only just got to the point where I'm now looking at letting chaos, letting the woodland be. Just let it be. Yeah. Don't fight it. Don't try and make sense of it. Yes, you are making sense of it, but in an aesthetic way. What you're given and what you see, you can't get your pruning. You can't start trimming and get lawnmower out or whatever. Yeah, so you've got branches, and it's how you make of that.
Is this why you've tightened up your shot? Because when I first looked at your photography, a lot of the trees, a lot of the wow factor was, wow, look at that tree with the sun just striking it, in the last knockings of light of a day. And it would be sometime we talked about the lonesome tree, didn't we, last month? But now you seem to be stepping into the woods a lot more, and now you're embracing the fact that you don't have to get the whole tree in, that there's a small part of it, and that small part of it is very layered often, so it is chaotic. You got foreground, midground, lots of background.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't see it, You can be looking at a scene and looking in, and you think it looks good, it looks clear. You've got a composition, and you get home and you notice there's things that are in the frame that you didn't want. Yeah. So the way I'm going about it now is to take care and attend to the composition, but the chaos is there no matter what. So it's where you place things, it's how you move your body. Yeah. I spoke not so long ago about the woodland shuffle. and kneeling down and getting high and shuffling left and right and just shuffle. Get the camera up to your eye, though, if you use your viewfinder, which I do, which we was talking about, wasn't it? It was on about cameras that don't have viewfinders. Yeah. I'd find that very difficult because the connection between what I'm seeing, the way the camera touches my face, and then the woodland scene in front of me is almost that extension reaching out from your eye, looking through the cameras, touching your face, and then you feel immersed. There's nothing in your peripheral.
Yeah.
Vision.
No, that's right. Yeah, that's the trouble with looking on the back of GR3s, etc. Lovely camera, but I find myself I'm not enveloped by the scene. I'm not a part of it. If my eye isn't up against that eyepiece, I feel somehow like I'm a bit of a visitor.
Spot on. And with chaotic scenes, being there with that up to your eye and being quite blinkered, you do start to see what's in front of you more, the layers. And you mentioned about I'm not taking the full tree. Funnily enough, last weekend I went out with a certain camera and I took a shot of almost a full tree in its root system. But that was because it lended itself to the scene. The sky was okay at that point, but a lot of the time, the chaos, sky doesn't help. But I want to develop a style, or I want to start doing, I say want, I already am, and I already have been, but I'd like to pursue this more, is focusing in on areas that are filled with chaos. I've mentioned it a few times to people about fractals and repeat patterns within nature, and they create a depth, they create a texture. They're the same colour or similar colours grouping together. So you might get a rowan that has berries in a certain colour of trees, and at the side of that you might have a birch that's got a more luminescent leaf, and then they bond together and they can create the composition. They can be within your frame positioning from your corners coming in, and then you can have some heavy like trunks or heavy bark that work as anchors that position the framing. But it's still chaotic. It's still quite a crazy scene. But by noticing and recognizing that each tree has its type of texture, form, shape, the grouping together of these trees and the grouping together of these certain types remove that distraction. Oh God, I can't cope with this. It's too chaotic. They actually invite you in like a blanket, or say a falling chandelier of shapes, or, as I've mentioned, fractals. Those repeat patterns and panels of areas within woodland then start creating something. You could say it's expressionism. You could say Monet used to do this. You could look at others, artists in the past, Degas, and the grouping, or what was the artist who did the pointillism as well? And that's how I see woodland sometimes, almost like pointillism. If you blur your eyes and look into the scene, you see the colours join and blend together, and then you can pick out the shapes and form a coherent composition out of chaos.
Now, you've also used long exposure for this, and the picture we're going to share on the show page this week. Oh, and by the way, we've got some trees. They're coming in now from listeners that are sharing their trees. So there will be some shared trees on the show page this week, and please send them in, because next month when Mally's back again, we're gonna start building up the collection of trees. Now, the one you're sharing is a long exposure fest, isn't it, in some respects? The anchor point, I suppose, is the tree, because that's the steady part of the relationship here, isn't it? It's there, it's been there for a long time, it's not going anywhere. But the foreground, the chaos, if you like, you're allowing that to dance around in the scene.
Yeah, to envelop around the branches, envelop around the trunks. And yes, you will get some movement in the trunks, but it's about revisiting again. This is why I say about a local woodland is so key and important, because you can try these techniques. The wind might not be blowing at 40 mile an hour on this particular day. It might be just 20 miles an hour, which is enough to give you movement of the light, delicate leaves, but keep the trunks and keep the tree static. So you do get these anchor shapes, but wrapped around, enveloped around these just beautiful formations in nature. You get this movement. This particular image, for me personally, I'm really proud of it. I love this image, and it isn't anything spectacular, but there's something quite emotional about it. And at the time when I found it, I'd been shooting a lot of seascapes and long exposure. When I say long exposure, you still want texture. These are not done like Kev would say, your reprobate mate, where you're flattening out everything and it becomes quite bleh, you know.
Well, he doesn't like the milky.
He does exactly
the milky seas, does he? I love it. I do like it. I like a cotton wool effect in the sea a lot.
It depends if is it the right time and place to do it, but I agree, I do like it myself. You know, Michael Kenner is a prime example of that style of long exposure, but here, and especially at the coast, a third of a second, a fifth of a second, or even 1 second, 2 seconds, depending on the movement, how vigorous it is. The same applies in the trees. You get that movement where the wind is just right and you could go 1/3 of a second, and you get these textures. Then when you get them textures, you get the contrast. That makes it three-dimensional. That gives it depth. And by cutting out the sky and finding aspect ratios, finding those crops that have those static anchor points within the woodland, and then let nature, let the leaves and the trees and time create the beautiful shapes and forms that are in front of you. And when it happens and you see it, it is a real wow moment. And I've only discovered this, I'd say, over the past 2 years, and I've spoke about it before, and I think when I've spoke about it, I've been a bit not realising that I'm getting into a money. It's been done before, do you know what I mean? But I've never seen it done this way with woodland, and I'm quite excited if other people will try it, and are other people doing it. And I haven't seen a lot of others doing it. I know Lizzie Shepherd, she's done quite a bit of photography like this. I absolutely adore her work. And it's not a conscious thing where I've gone, oh, someone does this, I'm going to do it. This has happened from the sea, the coastal photography, and then being in the woodland and applying the same rules to embrace and enjoy chaos.
And my thanks to Mally Davis. Well, I tell you what, we're getting some fantastic pictures that you're sending in, your Mally's trees, which I will pop on the show page. Each time Mally pops up, if we've got some of yours to show, I'm going to share them in there as well. Perhaps Mally will leave some comments. Sounds like homework, Neil. Sorry, Mally. On the show page to what you think about the trees. Maybe some, even we don't do this too often, because if it's unrequested, it's not necessarily required, but maybe some gentle critique, some thoughts, Mally, about the pictures that are sent in. That could be fun. Mally's good at stuff like that. Actually, I'm a member, I'm a patron of Mally's Let's Create community, which is fantastic. Some wonderful photographers in there. And I took part in Mally's monthly Zoom Zoom show, isn't it? That's the right expression for it, I think. And I haven't done this for a long, long time. I shared some pictures of mine. And usually in our Zoom show on our Patreon, on our Extra Mile community, I sit and watch others share their pictures. So it was a unique, well, totally unique, but interesting, unique-ish thing for me to be sharing my own pictures and my stories behind the photographs that I make. So thank you, Mally. I really, really enjoyed that this week. I truly did. And lest I forget, Mally's picture that he talks about, Picture of Chaos, that will be on today's show page, episode number 391. Now, advance notice. There is no regular Friday, well, there's nothing regular about this show anyway, but you know what I mean. No regular Friday Photowalk show next week. I have 2 weeks set aside with family this year during the summer break. Not 2 in a row this time, but if you wake up next Friday to find that there is a surprise for you, well, it'll be a special show sharing some of the moments we spend together. That's we as in me and Extra Milers in that particular community. And what is the Extra Mile, Neil? Oh, have you not been listening? Have you been sat at the back of the class on your phone again, have you? The Extra Mile is an extra show each week for those who support the production of this programme on our Patreon channel. Without you, the show would certainly not be what it is today, and it definitely would not be approaching a 400th edition, which I'm hoping, some mathematics allowing here, will be our special programme edition on the Scottish retreat in September. We make those who are extra milers the stars of these Extra Mile shows. It's fabulous to listen to photographers like Jean Fruth talk about their profession, about their love of photography and their travels today as well. But it's equally, I think, to hear from those who make photographs we have some professionals in the Extra Mile group as well, but those who predominantly in there don't turn a dollar or a pound or a euro or a goat per square inch for making photographs. No, they do it because they love it, and for many it's part of their a well-being thing, and a plethora of other reasons. And I thought when we've done, what is it? Are we up to 47? It's the 47th one this week, isn't it? Yeah. And there's 100 or so other bits before that, including more episodes when it was called More. And I thought it would be fun to make the Extra Milers the interviewees, the conversationalists, the stars of those particular walk shows. So that's exactly what we've done. We also have a live Zoom show each month for the Extra Milers. The next one is on the 8th of August. It's a Tuesday. It's at 8 p.m. UK time. And we've got some pop-ups coming soon for our Australian and New Zealand listeners, although actually anybody can take part. But I'm doing it for the time zone differences.
On this week's Extra Mile,
I talk with a name you'll know because, well, it's one of our show volunteers too. It's Neil Ford.
The other question you ask a lot of people is, who are your influences? Yeah. And my answer to that is probably slightly odd. In it's the picture editors of the Sunday supplements. Because that's where I consumed most of photography in my younger years.
Well, you may not know any of their names.
No. I could probably. And I can't even remember most of the photographers. No, Bailey's the obvious one that stands out, and obviously Don McCullen shot for the Sunday Times, so I would have seen some of his images. And I can never ever remember the name of the sports photographer that worked for the Observer, who's quite famous back in that time. And they're the kind of people, because my parents got the Sunday Times and the Observer on a Sunday, and I sat and looked through the magazines. Yeah. So that's where I will have got my photo, which is strange because you think about it, I shoot predominantly social photography, but not that street photography, or it's events, going to events and photographing public events. I don't shoot portraits. It's not something I've ever really done. I definitely have never shot fashion or anything like that. So it's interesting, why. But they are where I will have got my photographic influences from. It will have been those that where I did. So why did I pick up a camera? I still don't know.
This week's Extra Mile is out now, and you can listen to it by clicking on the support the show icon on the front of the website photowalk.show. If you are not a member, the latest shows have a 5-minute free preview, although, as I say every week, that preview is really just a little bit of my introduction. But it gives you a flavour, it gives you a taste, and, a rather extended taste of those Extra Miles, hopefully, will be there for you this coming Friday, the next edition, when we don't take our regular photo walk. I play you some of the moments from our Extra Mile shows of the past. I'm looking out for some sketchbook images that I can make as I make my walk. I think this is good here. This actually could work with Mally's theme today of chaos. And it's not a big tree or anything. There's a small there's some leaves in front of it, and it's the roots of, I don't know what that tree is. It used to be a tree by the looks of it. It's the roots. Just is it a dead tree? I think so. It's not a large tree. Look, let me shoot through this gap, and it's a blur weather day today. It's raining, it's drizzly, there's no features in the sky. I'm going to shoot through, but this tree seems to be illuminated by, it's almost like somebody's put a small lamp above it. Let's see if I can show that in my sketchbook image using my X100V today. which I absolutely love when I go on my travels. Let's just, you can hear me clicking through the exposure here. I usually underexpose a lot of my photographs, but this one, I think I'm still going to need to. Right, shooting through the chaos slightly. 1/2/5, f4.5, ISO 1600, square format picture. There we go. Let's see what that, there's some ivy here. I do like ivy. Bit of a fan of ivy. I know some people don't like ivy at all. Some people say, oh no, it sucks the lifeblood out of your house. You should never have ivy, and various other beliefs. But I like it. I really, it's ivy that covers Wimbledon, isn't it, on one side of the building? Oh, Neil. No, it's X. No, I'm sure it's ivy. Here we go. Compact ivy in square format. Long title for small picture. Right. Push my camera around the back there. Another place atop last week's one was just about to go to the Photowalk retreat to Africa in January. It's getting tighter now. I'll talk more about our plans for Africa in the coming weeks. But thank you so much for that. I was, but in sort of less encouraging news this week. I was really sad to hear of the passing of Sinead O'Connor, aged only 56, in the news a couple of evenings ago. If you're listening to this, of course, on the day of release, that is. And it coincides with the release of a film about her life, which is due to be released. Whether it will still be, I don't know, this coming weekend. So the timing of the story is truly very tragic, as indeed her personal family story has been over the last 18 months. So I often talk about my dad on this show, don't I? He was quite the fan of hers. I was, if I've done my maths right, I was 23 when she had her big launch pad world hit, the cover of Nothing Compares to You. So it wouldn't have been a song we listened to together on the long van journeys that I often get very nostalgic about, where on the scratchy AM radio in Dad's van, he'd say, listen to this, son. Go on, listen. This, son, this is real music. But had timing been different, I'm sure that's something he would have said to me as we made our van journeys together. I was thinking of the amount of stories I hear on the show when guests have commented that they owe their careers to somebody gifting them a camera. Charlie Phillips is a perfect example, the first one that comes to mind, who we spoke to, quite a while ago now. Must reach out to Charlie again some stage. He photographed an England coming to terms with ethnicity in London. He made pictures of, Jimi Hendrix, Muhammad Ali, and he sold those pictures the world over. But if you remember from that interview, if you heard it, of course, it was a camera from a GI living in the UK, which was left with Charlie's dad to settle a 15 shillings debt. That was the starting point, really, for Charlie's interest in career in pictures, because Charlie's dad had this camera. He wasn't going to use it. He said, here we go, son. You have it. You use it. And there we go. The rest is history, as they say. And Sinead O'Connor has a musical story, which is not identical, of course, but it has a sort of similar outcome. She had anything but a simple and innocent life growing up, and in fact it was a life of petty crime at times in her teens, and it saw her then being raised educationally by nuns, one of whom, in an act of sympathy and kindness, bought Sinead a guitar, and the rest, as I say, with Charlie, continue sentence here, etc. Anyway, authentic is a word we often use in photography, and it's a word I've heard over and over to describe her in the many tributes I've read since the passing this week. And if you remember that video, the video to Nothing Compares to You, the tears that she sings through on the video in that particular song, that's a perfect example, really, of that authenticity, which features, it's a close-up shot, really quite close actually, of Sinead O'Connor's face as she sings through a feeling where there's real mixed emotions actually. There's sadness, and it's suggested there's, and I think you can see it anyway, there's complete anger in that in that song as well at times. And from interviews about those tears, because you would imagine she's been asked many times about them, whether they were real, she said yes, they were. They were certainly very real. And they came after thinking about her mother, who sadly died in a car accident in 1985. So they were very powerful emotions indeed. And I've said it before, if it weren't for the archaic music licensing around podcasting, our Playout song today, there's no doubt in my mind, it would have been Nothing Compares to You, Sinead O'Connor's wonderful version. So I was very sad to hear of Sinead's passing this week. And I wanted to mention it because authenticity is a word, as I say, we so often use when we're talking about pictures and the pictures that we particularly enjoy. And I think that's something that I particularly remember about the music of Sinead O'Connor, or the artistry, not just the music, but the artistry of Sinead O'Connor. Definitely finding my way through or along the path today. Navigating might be a term. I have a lot to do for the mailbag in the coming weeks. I have a proper dip-in episode to come, I feel, but let me read one here before returning to the second part of my chat this week with Jean Fruth. It's a letter and 3 pictures, which of course will be on the show page today, from Marilyn Davis. Thank you, Marilyn, for your letter. A quick note to say how much I'm enjoying the conversation you're having with Paul Sanders. Still have about 28 minutes to go. That's episode 371. So it's a few weeks ago now, actually, isn't it? That either shows that you're a little bit behind with your listening, or I'm a bit behind with my letter. Probably the latter. It can't be you, Marilyn, I'm sure. But in episode 371, I went walking with Paul Sanders. It was we hugged a few trees, actually. Mally, you would have been proud of me. We talked about all manner of things, didn't we? There was definitely light and shade in that particular programme. It was the same weekend that I went searching for the grave of my birth mother. We covered that in the extra mile edition that particular week. I particularly like the inspiration, says Marilyn, returning to the path with Paul here, he gives as to the notion that photographs, well, they don't have to be perfect. I went for a little city walk last evening before a work function and made a couple of photos which I previously, I would have discarded them as they were imperfect in their quality. But now, with Paul's thoughts ringing in my brain, if not ear, I've decided to keep them. Not sure whether anyone else can see what I saw in them, but the more I see them, the more I like them. I've attached them for you to have a look at as well. If you'd like to include them on the webpage, you're welcome to, which I have, Marilyn. Would I like to? Yes, of course I would. You had me at would. So yes, they are on the show page today. I've put them there. Thank you for your thought-provoking and inspiring conversations, says Marilyn. You're welcome, very welcome. And you're right. You're right. They don't have to be perfect. And actually, with your pictures, and it's been said by many photographers, the person you're primarily pleasing, I know that there are commercial concerns, and sometimes, you're thinking for your clients in a somewhat different way to when I'm making my walk along here and thinking, what can I photograph in a square format? And really only making the pictures for me, I guess. That's what, Marilyn, you were making those pictures for. That's who, rather. Not what, but who you were making those pictures for. A 3-letter word, Y-O-U, you. So I'm proud as punch, as they say, to put them on the show page today to demonstrate that we're talking about. Right, part 2 of my conversation with Jean Fruth, and we start in part 2 talking, I suppose, about the part of the craft, the art, if you will, of making pictures in whatever genre, where your I'm going to call it flying hours, where your flying hours come into their own. Those flying hours of experience, where you can read your picture and know how the story is going to build before it even happens. In terms of knowing the players, and this is more about when they're in gameplay than those that you've spoken with, formed friendships with, etc. I would imagine you need to get to know players and the way that they play, and that might sound a bit strange, but I know through speaking now to a few sports photographers that they've gotten to know some players so well in their games that they know when they're going to turn. They know how they carry themselves. Do you keep notes? Are they mental? Are they physical? Are they written down? Do you study the game like a coach, if you will?
Yeah, if I haven't shot a particular player before, I look at everything I can look at. And that's what's great now is you can see everything. You can go on the wires. You can find so much about a venue, about a player, about a team, about a sport. When I was shooting high school way back in the day, I had to shoot all sports. And I got sent to my first wrestling match. And I walked into this gym and I might as well have been in a country I'd never been in before. I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening here? And I'm looking at it, trying to figure out what's the picture? What exactly are they doing? And then I was so worried about their high school kids embarrassing one player versus the other during the matches. And you really learn, the more you know the sport, the more you know the athlete, the more consistently you're going to get the shot, because athletes repeat themselves. They do the same thing over and over again. Doesn't matter. Football, soccer, basketball, baseball, tennis. They hit the ball the same way. They throw the ball the same way. They leap in the air exactly the same way. You'll just see when they're leaping as they're kicking or they're throwing, their arm is the same in the same exact position every time. That's why they're at the peak of their game. So if you know that and you know what side to be on, what angle is best to shoot them, because you can see where the beauty is in that shot, then you're ready and you're making better pictures.
It's interesting that the fish out of water thing that you mentioned with your sports. You've shot some, I saw it on your website, you've shot some boxing.
Oh, I love boxing. Yeah. And I learned boxing from the greatest boxing photographer ever, Neil Leifer. Yeah. He took me to my first boxing match at Madison Square Garden. First, we went to boxing gyms and looked at a lot of boxing pictures, and he's the master, his pictures. He's also a Sony artisan, and Neil is 80 years old, and he's still shooting actively today, still shooting boxing. And the first boxing match I shot, we were going together, and he said, it's going to be a contest. We're going to have a judge, and we're going to see who shoots boxing the best. And I said, no, we're not. That's not the deal. When were you going to tell me this? I don't want to have a contest with Neil Leifer with boxing. And he had such a good time. But it was a lot of fun. We did well, and I learned a lot.
Talking about things changing as the years have gone by, I think that the positions that you're allowed to find when you photograph are different. No longer can you actually be on the field of play. You have to be removed from it now. But there was a time, I think, and I saw you talking about a moment when you used to be able to be out there with them. And I know you like to lie on the floor, so I would imagine you would have been lying on the floor as somebody was coming in.
I'm definitely laying in a lot of dirt, and I still do. It's it's part of it, and it makes beautiful pictures. And you can't be on the field anymore, not in professional games. Through my grassroots work, I'll still lie on the floor, and people look at me like I'm nuts,
How has the culture changed then of baseball? I know you said that the money's different now. You've seen that change yourself as the years have gone by. The culture will have altered, won't it?
Oh, certainly. You can count on it. I mean, that's with everything, isn't it? That it's going to change. Just like our craft is changing and moving so fast. And there's nothing to do except for to keep up with it and adjust, with that new culture. So whatever it's going to be, whether it's photo positions or the access to athletes, it's adjusting and making your own decisions as best you can of, okay, how do I adjust and what do I want to be in this new world? And that's why the grassroots work to me is more and more exciting, because it really isn't about money and contracts and lockouts. It's really about the pure love of the sport. And so I'm always trying to find that and what's new out there. So baseball is still evolving, and there's new countries coming into baseball. We saw that with the World Baseball Classic, and players coming from different places that, never had there's a player from Uganda now, and just other countries that we never had professional players, or they're introduced to the sport on a young level, and that's cool. And then seeing women get in the game for the first time and in a bigger way. Women have always been in baseball, but the door has opened and closed for them. And now women are blowing the hinges off the door, and they're in the game of baseball in a more exciting and bigger presence.
Well, there was a particular moment in history, much like I think the game of football or soccer in the UK, where during, I think, the war, women playing the game, it was really important, wasn't it? It certainly was in England during the war, women playing football. So it's always been there, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has. And so much happened. So during the war, the men went off to war, and they introduced baseball to European countries for the first time. Italy plays baseball. There's places where American bases were that still have professional baseball teams, that really started in World War II. And then the owner of the Cubs, Mr. Wrigley, decided, okay, we don't have our baseball players. Let's start a women's professional baseball league. And he sent scouts out around the country and found women's softball players, converted them to baseball players, and started the AAGPBL, the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, which is the movie A League of Their Own.
A League of Their Own, which is one of my favourite movies. It has one of my favourite lines when Tom Hanks says, "It's supposed to be hard. It's the heart that makes it so great."
See, you do like baseball.
Well, maybe I do. After all, know more about it than I think.
Yeah, great movie. And, Penny Marshall, she put women's baseball, kind of on the map, with that movie, reminding people that women were in baseball. And women were in baseball in 1866. Vassar College had the first women's college baseball team.
Grassroots baseball, then. Come on, it was your first book. We've got two books to talk about, really. And it does showcase the sport very much in an international light, doesn't it? I didn't realise, for example, and you've mentioned it already, that baseball is a sport in Dominican Republic, for starters.
Oh, the Dominican Republic, probably close to 30% of all major league players are from Latin America.
Really?
And the Dominican Republic is the highest percentage. Puerto Rico, Venezuela, of course, Curacao is such a tiny little island that so many major, but not a big presence as far as percentage. Puerto Rico, now Colombia, Mexico, of course, but the Dominican Republic leads the pack. And everywhere you go in the Dominican Republic, you can find baseball, on the streets, and every major league team has an academy in the Dominican Republic, working with these players from a very young age. They're 16 years old and they're in these academies training and learning baseball, and they'll have English classes and different things at the academy, but they live at these academies around the country, and they're developing players in the Dominican Republic.
Wow, what a part of their culture that game now is, obviously. The format of the book, each story starts with a legend, doesn't it? Isn't that the way that it works?
Yeah, and there's it's divided into chapters by region, 7 regions outside the U.S. and 8 in the U.S. So it opens with a legend that talks about what it was like. Vladimir Guerrero talks about growing up in the Dominican Republic, and he lives in a small town a few hours from the capital called Don Gregorio. Dirt roads, the most simple, humble beginning. And he still lives there today.
Wow.
He never left. His mom and his people, and he has the biggest house.
I was going to say, not in the same house, probably.
But no, he's got a pretty nice house in Don Gregorio. But still, there's dirt roads, and he's just hanging there, and he's such a humble man. Really, just that's all he wants to do is hang there. He's never left. And it's interesting because those guys, they'll play for a team, and whatever their team is, they represent that team, and that's a responsibility going into the Hall of Fame. But these guys, like Vladimir Guerrero, he's representing a whole country. The country celebrates him, what a guy like that, the third player from the Dominican Republic to go into the Baseball Hall of Fame. So from that town to the Hall of Fame is incredible for a guy like that. What an accomplishment.
But it doesn't sound to me, only because of something you suggested when you were traveling and initially didn't know you were going to do the book, that the book was planned as part of your travels.
Not the first one. Everywhere I went, I just shot the grassroots game.
Right.
Starting with my son's little league, and rookie ball. And I didn't care where it was, high school games, old guys playing stickball on the streets of New York City. So if I was in Japan, I was shooting the World Baseball Classic, I'd find Little League games in Tokyo. Great story about that, actually. I reached out to Little League International, helps me quite a bit. And so they connected me with Japan. I said, I'm going to Japan. I'd love to shoot a Little League game. And it was the beginning of their season. So I shot their opening ceremonies. This was in 2016, I think, or 15. So they had a big ceremony, and then they asked me, if we have a game in this location and a game in this location, which one do you want to go to? And I just chose the one closer to my hotel because I had a game to shoot that night. Yeah. I said, I'll go to that one. And I shot the game, and it was great, and the culture and learning so much. I ate at the Snack Shack. I had miso soup. Fabulous. Got to have Snack Shack. They have a great Snack Shack. Very different. No sunflower seeds there. And then that was in March. Fast forward to August of that same year, I'm at the Williamsport Little League World Series. This is as big as it gets for that age level, and it's all around the world. Now, the best of the best who've been eliminated now, there's X amount of teams in Williamsport, and I'm there for the whole 2 weeks. It starts with a parade down there, Little Main Street, and I'm walking down Main Street, figuring out what background's going to be nice to shoot this parade, and I keep hearing my name, and I'm trying to figure out where it's coming from, and I look over, and there's all these Japanese tourists in this section waving to me. And I'm like, what is happening? And I get closer and I realize it's the people that I met that day shooting that game. I'm like, what are you doing here? They said, we won everything. We're here at the Little League World Series. So I shot their very first game of that season. And then by crazy coincidence, they were there and they ended up winning the Little League World Series that year. So it was such a fun, adventure. But I had no idea it was going to be a book. So I just kept shooting the amateur game for my own, collection. The images were never seen. And then when I was working with the Hall of Fame, the idea came about of wouldn't it be great to tie these amateur images in with these professional, players, these legends that tell their stories. So I paired the amateur images with, and they got a lot out of it. Guys like Hank Aaron from Mobile, Alabama, when he finally got to see the book, I was so proud to show it to him. And he's looking at the amateur images all from Mobile, from where he grew up. And he said, wow, this is really Mobile. And I thought, if I never get a compliment again, I'm good. It coming from a legend like Hank Aaron.
It sounds to me like you get as much thrill out of the grassroots game now as you do. I mean, I know that the two are going to be very, very different, but you seem to get a thrill as much. And you mentioned grassroots quite a lot since the start of our chat. That you do get a big thrill from that form, that start of baseball.
Oh, I really do. Even teaching photography, everybody says, how do I get on a major league field? How do I shoot a professional game? How do I get credentialed? And I understand that. It was amazing, to get credentialed. And, I shot with my first game. I think I shot everything. The player was standing there looking like a tree. And I thought it was interesting. And I was shooting it because you're excited. But really, it's not about that. And that's what I try to convey, like teaching now, like don't worry about the who, worry about the what. Because great pictures can be made, better pictures can be made in a grassroots situation, an amateur, because your access is better. You can make decisions on where you're standing more, and then you can chase the light, right? Don't go to the 12 o'clock game, go to the 4 p.m. game. And make beautiful pictures. Like if it's photography, that's what it's about.
Route 66. So this is the follow-up book. This just sounds like an excuse to go traveling to me. And it can't be a bad way to go traveling.
No, it was a great way to go traveling. And after the book came out, the first book, it was, okay, I'm at a point in my life I want to give back, and like we talked about, like giving back to the craft that we love and giving back to the sport that I love. And so we partnered with Jeff Idelson, who was retiring from the Baseball Hall of Fame. And I said, what do you think about growing grassroots baseball into a not-for-profit and giving back? And he loved the idea. So lucky for me, he said yes. And we decided to start along Route 66 because it doesn't get more Americana than
absolutely
baseball and Route 66. And we had an absolute blast. And we had clinics for kids. Sponsors were an important part of grassroots baseball because they enabled us to give each kid a new baseball glove and ball.
Wow.
Legends joined us, and we had clinics. Minor league ballparks opened up their doors for us, and Boys and Girls Club came, and kids got introduced to the game by these legends, teaching them how to throw a ball and words of inspiration. We spent 3 years along Route 66, and it was just such a terrific experience documenting the grassroots game and tying it into this Americana.
Yeah, the book I saw is sold out. Is there a reprint coming?
I hope so. They did a reprint of the last one, so I wonder if the publisher will. I have to reach out to them and see what their plan is. It'd be fun to have a second printing of that one as well.
Well, I found a few. I think I found one on Abe, and I thought, scarcity being the thing. This is going to make.
I got to have a look. I haven't looked in a while. I'll see where it's at.
Yeah, it must have been fun photographing the Rolling Stones in Cuba. And I was thinking, was it? Maybe I'm being a bit poetic here, but perhaps a nod to one of your original mentors that you were there doing that for him.
Sure.
Well, I know it was for you, but maybe for him as well.
Oh, he loved it, and all the rock and roll stories, and Baron and I always exchanged lyrics. To me, that's poetry. So I sent him Joni Mitchell lyrics many, many years ago. And he said, wow, that's beautiful. Like, who wrote that? I said, a woman that you photographed many times, Baron Joni Mitchell. And we started getting into reading lyrics and and he said, I never really paid attention to the lyrics. I was always too busy shooting it. Like all of us as photographers, right? We're thinking about something else. We're not really listening. Yeah. So when I got a chance to shoot the Rolling Stones, it was an incredible week. The Tampa Bay Rays played the Cuban national team in Havana. And that was a historic moment. And President Obama was there, and things were starting to open up between the USA and Cuba. They once again closed, so that didn't last long, but it was a moment of this could possibly happen at the time. And then the Rolling Stones come for the first time, and it's a first, rock USA, and the Rolling Stones, of course, coming. Well, the first time the Rolling Stones was going to play in Cuba. And so I was like, well, I'm not going back on this MLB plane. I'm staying. Rolling Stones are playing in Cuba. Like, I'll find my way back another way. And so the opportunity to shoot that, they came from all over Cuba the night before and found there was a free concert, a free concert for all the Cuban people.
Was it?
Oh. It was just a sea of people, and they camped out the night before. Yes. And the excitement was so incredible.
Wow. Just watching people going into that must have been as fascinating as watching the gig itself.
Yeah. And what to expect and what to happen, and of course, Mick Jagger comes out and he says, hola, Cuba. And he does this thing. And it was, wow, this is history in the making, and so exciting. So I shot in the pit for the first 3 songs. And that was kind of the rule. They didn't have many of us.
It's a 3-song pit rule, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, well, that's okay with me because I want to go out there anyway and shoot like what is happening out there. So I was fine to shoot the 3 and get those beautiful close-up shots. And then off I went wandering and trying to find things to climb up on because I'm so short, making these wide shots and telling this incredible story. And highlight for sure for me.
They're wonderful, wonderful shots. shouts. And of course, I'm going to put links to that and the other stories today on the website. Now, I have a sort of big final question that I want to ask. I've got another one in the meantime, though. But what is I should have looked this up. I know I should have looked this up. I've failed because you'd have been so impressed had I had the right word. Is there a final part of the gameplay in baseball? The final shot. I mean, for us, it might be a penalty shootout. Is there a final moment in baseball that is the defining pinnacle moment where you think, right, this is the decider? Is there a
They go extra innings, for sure. So when a game goes extra innings, that's exciting. And if the home team wins, whether it's in the ninth inning, which is the final inning, or in extra innings, it's called a walk-off.
Okay.
So that's exciting, shooting a walk-off, especially if it's playoffs, and then obviously it's happening for the home team. So you get all the fans in the stands. So a walk-off during a big playoff game could be really exciting. And usually that player is celebrated. There's a Gatorade bath maybe, and he's leaping around, and you're making your celebration pictures and trying not to get hit with the Gatorade when you're getting that shot or whatever it may be. But so a walk-off is
well, I don't know whether my walk-off question is going to end in a Gatorade bath, but before I ask that, I did see you. It was a wonderful interview. I saw you, and I really enjoyed your interview, but I have to say I was watching most of all how you were cooking pizza for Simon out in that pizza oven, your son, and that was the bit I was sort of most glued to. I was thinking, she's not cooked that enough. That needs, and you even said it. You said this needs another minute. I was thinking, you're right, it does. Don't be feeding Simon that. You're going to give him food poisoning.
Exactly. No, it's got to be right. The bottom's got to be. It's about the oven temperature. So you have to have the oven temperature about 700 degrees to make it right.
What? 700?
Oh yeah, that's why it's an outdoor oven, and so there's even like temperature guns, but I don't use it anymore. But I know how to get the oven bottom hot. You got to get it just right. Yeah, Simon's pretty particular about his pizza.
You threw it quite well, I thought. It looked a good base.
Oh, yeah. That was the person interviewing me was quite surprised that was the direction we went. So we had a good time.
Anyway, look.
I'll make one for you. Come visit.
That's a deal. Right, walk-off question. I ask this of many of the photographers I talk with and to, and I'm always really intrigued by what they have to say. And it's a really simple question, but I don't think it's an easy one to answer. So, what is your why in photography? Why do you do this? What does it bring to you?
Oh yeah, that's a great walk-off question. Yeah, very good. The why has changed over time, right? I mean, it's kind of who we were, who I was at 20 and the why, and who I was at 30 and 40. And yes, now in my 50s, that why has changed. The why was the challenge at first. It was, to become a professional photographer and be good at my craft and make pictures. The feeling that I get making a photograph is still the same feeling I had then. So the consistency of capturing something new in a different way that I haven't done before. What's going to happen? It's different than, okay, I'm going in and I know I'm going to be taking portraits and, the game action and capturing. When you go to a ballpark, you don't know what's going to happen. Maybe it's going to be a walk-off, maybe an animal is going to run on the field. Who knows what's going to happen? But there's something new every time, and being able to capture that new. I photographed my first perfect game just recently, and here I am, at 55 years old, and now I was like, wow, I finally shot a perfect game. There's not many of them. So the new and what is going to happen, the excitement of that is still a why for me. And now the why for me is certainly giving back. And it's nice to surround my work with purpose. I wasn't there in my 20s and 30s, but now surrounding my work with purpose is most important to me. That's the why.
What a wonderful delight to talk with Jean Fruth. And a perfect why, I think, to round off our chat. Andrew Bernstein, who was mentioned within our conversation, has invited me, if I'm on the right side of the pond, to go to basketball with him. And Gene has extended the offer for baseball. So I was thinking, if I could make it happen, what a great American sporting walk we could have. That would be fabulous. Today's show page 391 is on our website, photowalk.show. It's got lots of links to films and pictures, thoughts, the postcard, of course, from Wish You Were Here. Oh, I look forward to receiving your Wish You Were Here's. If you could send them in. Stories at photowalk.show is the email address, stories at photowalk.show. And, well, there can be anything. I mean, it's wide. Wish You Were Here is wide open. And I don't know why it comes to mind, but a particular picture of the Aldermaston Weapons Establishment comes to mind, which is a weird thing to have a picture of, isn't it? And unfortunately, one of those places that does sit uncomfortably close to me on our doorstep. But see that... Not sure whether you'd say Wish You Were Here, but it's a postcard and it has history. There's certainly stuff to talk about there. That's a weird one to think about. So I'll let you send me what you believe is your Wish You Were Here. I would be honoured to receive. And I'm not just closing it down to one postcard a week featured on the show. If we have a few, we'll share them all. So we will. Today's show page 391 then on our website. Lots of links and films and pictures. Or you can follow the link in the podcast player app that will also take you there. It's on your app. I say it every week. Come on, there. No, not that one. That's not the link. There, that bit. Yes, that one. Click. No, don't worry about it. Click it and it will open up in a different... See, there we go. Different window. You thought you were floating off into the ether there, but you weren't. And when you visit the page, I'm going to ask you the favour I've been asking for a month or so now. If you could take a moment to share the show, which has been made so much easier by the keeper of IT, Neil Ford. There are a few colourful buttons beneath the audio player which allow you to share on platforms like WhatsApp and Facebook and Twitter, LinkedIn, and so on and so forth. We shouldn't say Twitter now, we should say X, shouldn't we? Oh, that's a story for another week. If you get a moment, please could you click one and it will automatically log into your app of choice. The Extra Mile is out now, a real shoot the breeze with Neil Ford, a photographer who finds himself at the crossroads in life. I would dare say that there's a few of us in this community that might be in a similar place. He's wondering what path may lead to a life of vive la différence, although I don't believe he said anything in French to me during the entire conversation. Thank you to our volunteers who help out behind the scenes. They do this for the love and the very much earned famous not so famous flask. Andrea Gilpin is like our head of department on the Instagram and ideas floor. Emily Renier keeps a watchful eye out in our Facebook group, along with Kelly Mitchell. Our playout song today is from Yehezkel Raz, and it features the haunting, whispering vocal tones of Sivan Talmor, and it's probably one of my more left-field choices as a playout, which is the song at the end of the show, if you've just joined us for the first week, to make some final photographs on your walk today, or just walk along, listening to it, just thinking of the things that we've been talking about. I think this has a reasonably meditative feeling. It's all about memories, which really is our currency through life, isn't it? Especially when it comes to pictures. There's a repetition in terms of the vocals in the song about the memories, all the words, all the stuff I've never heard. There's some of the words. And though it will never, ever, with due respect, replace wishing I could play Sinead O'Connor today, I listened, it was definitely for well over an hour yesterday on the Brilliant Arts list. And this song, it seemed to, it struck me as a song that has lots of feeling behind the voice, many different emotions. And this feels to me like one of the songs that would, here comes some imagination now, would take me on a walk through the woodland on my own, quietly making pictures of the chaos, obviously, for Mali. Anyway, listen, let me release those vocals to you, and I'll meet you, as they say, on the other side with a final postscript thought for the show. the voice, the haunting tones of Sivan Talmor, a song called Finding My Memories. I don't know whether you can hear that, it's just started raining. It's not heavy rain yet. Sometimes the winter editions, well, not always the winter. I mean, last Saturday in England land, at a place called Notley Abbey, a wonderful venue I was photographing at. It used to be, we must actually, I keep thinking I'll do this, and one day I will, because there's a beautiful tree-lined avenue. I'm not quite sure how long the tree-lined avenue dates back to, because it was asked the other day as I was walking with the couple I was photographing whether the tree-lined avenue was actually planted by Laurence Olivier and Vivian Lee, who were the famous owners of the house. And I wasn't quite sure. It's beautiful. It would make a great photo walk. It really would. Some super pictures. It's an old Augustine, look this up, Neil, when you get back, monastery with... the sort of monastic history which meant some kings didn't take to it too kindly. So much of it didn't survive, but parts of it did. And there's one wall, I always like this with guests who are dining there. I say, have you seen the monk in the wall? And people think, oh, that sounds a bit strange. A monk carved his face into one of the surviving walls in the refectory, as it is, where they eat. And it's you can see people. I don't tell anybody where it is, and I'm sure some people ask the staff. But some of those youngsters, they've got no idea, no interest. So I usually send people off looking for the... it must annoy those that are serving. Why has he sent them off looking for the monk in the wall now, when I'm trying to serve starters? Anyway, where were we? I got completely lost there, didn't I? Oh, yes, it rained all day long. Yeah, so I was talking about the rain, wasn't I? Yeah, during the winter, you can hear the rain in the shows sometimes. And had I recorded an edition last Saturday, you would most certainly have heard the rain. It was vicious. At the start of... shall I make a picture? Yeah, let me make a picture before I do the quote. I'll end with a sketchbook. I'll be making square format pictures today. What shall I do? I quite like this. There we go. A something and nothing. It's some form of thistle. Let me get a close-up. Here we go. 1/40th f4.5. Last sketchbook for the day. 160 ISO. Square format. I quite like square format. It's quite an interesting... certainly when you're composing, if you switch across to seeing it as a square image, when you're composing, it's a really interesting format to work within, is square. Right, at the start of the week, I talked with Andrew Crome, who is an extra miler who will feature on next Friday's Extra Mile as the show moves from Wednesdays to Fridays. So it really will be a follow-on show from next Friday. Well, not from next Friday, because it's a bit of a special, isn't it, next week? But nearly every other week, it will be the Friday Photo Walk, and then a continuation, really, into the Extra Mile. And Andrew Crome is my guest next week, one of our very special Extra Milers, who is a sports... he knows about sports psychology, which made for a really interesting discussion, actually. So he features on next Friday's Extra Mile, and on his Insta grid that I looked through to get an idea of what to talk with him about for the special Shooting the Breeze chat, I spied a portrait he'd made with somebody called Isabella Bernianini. It was a branding shoot, I think. Yes, it was. It was a branding shoot. Anyway, it was very relaxed. It was a wonderful portrait. And in it, there's Isabella, and she's stood at what looks like a kitchen counter with a relaxed smile. Perfect relaxed picture, it really is. I'm sure she was very pleased with it. And she's holding a cup of coffee. But it was also the words on the cup that straight away struck me with, whoa, there's a PS for this coming week. It's our postscript to the show today. Right there, boom, in that photo. 9 words, which I think are perfect. And so that's why I've made it this week's PS. If it doesn't challenge you, it won't change you.
The Photo Walk is a Loading Zone production.